the financial infidelity piece is lying about money to your partner. It can be as something as simple as lying about what you spent money on, to having a secret account, to violating agreements that you have about how money is going to be spent or saved. So really simply, just being dishonest with your partner about money.
This is episode number 567 with Tracy Coenen. We're going to be talking about financial infidelity, financial abuse, how to find the hidden money when you're going through a divorce or any kind of situation, whether you're married the first time, married the second time, the third time. We are going to be talking about all of it with Tracy in just a few minutes. Hi, everybody. I am Sandy Weiner. Welcome back to Last First Date Radio, where we believe it is never too late to go on your last first date. And to support you on that journey to lasting love, I wrote 2 books. The first one is called Becoming a Woman of Value: How to Thrive in Life and Love. And this book is filled with lots of tips to really increase your self-worth. And it's divided into 30 chapters, really helpful exercises in each chapter. And the second book is called Choice Points in Dating. And this is a book to empower you to make healthier decisions in love. And I found that so many people feel they're not at choice. They feel they don't know how to make choices. Everything is about the choices we make. And so this book really breaks it down from how to think about dating, how to choose the right partner, how to choose whether to stay or go, and what are the keys to lasting love. And a lot of those keys are from this podcast, from these amazing guests that I've had, because it's something that they've all shared with me at the end of every podcast. So you can find both of these books on Amazon for Kindle or paperback. This week's tip from the Woman of Value book is step number 6, which is learn to receive graciously. As women, and I know that like women, it's sort of our nature to receive, but we don't do it very easily. So whether it's somebody complimenting you or trying to do something nice for you, especially if a man says, hey, do you need help with that? And then we go, no, I got this. It's really not the most sexy thing you can do. So if you want to have partnership, you really need to learn to receive. Somebody gives you a compliment, you go, thank you. Instead of going, this old thing, I got it on sale 10 years ago. It doesn't make the other person feel very good when you turn down something that somebody is trying to give to you. So my challenge to you this week is to just receive, say thank you. And before I bring Tracy on, I want to invite you, if you're not yet a member of my fabulous Facebook group, it's called Your Last First Date. And I started this group because I realized that there really are very few safe spaces online for people, women who are dating or in relationships in midlife. Very few safe spaces for anyone who's dating, because they become just places for complaints and to just share how awful things are. But things don't have to be so awful, and especially if you're getting guidance by me and my 7 amazing monitors. So if you are interested in a positive place for support and you're a woman over 40, join us at Your Last First Date. And now for my guest, Tracy Coenen. She has been investigating fraud for over 25 years, but she didn't always want to be a forensic accountant. She had a dream of being a prison warden, and so she went to college to get a degree in criminology. But while she was in school, she took a class on financial crime investigations, and it reminded her how much she loved the Encyclopedia Brown books as a kid. I love that. And as she continued her criminology degree, she added accounting and economics courses so she could become a CPA. And so today she finds money in cases of corporate fraud, high net worth divorce, and other financial shenanigans. Welcome to the show, Tracy.
Thank you so much for having me, Sandy. I loved hearing about your Facebook group and what you want to do in terms of a safe space for people who are dating, because that's tough these days. Loved hearing about your books and your tips to accept things graciously. We do have a hard time doing that, don't we?
We do. And thank you for that. See, I said thank you. I didn't say, oh, this old thing.
Yes, exactly.
Let's dive right into financial infidelity or financial abuse. What is it, and how can people identify it if it shows up?
Right. Financial infidelity and financial abuse are very closely related. They have a lot of overlap to them. The financial infidelity piece is lying about money to your partner. It can be as something as simple as lying about what you spent money on, to having a secret account, to violating agreements that you have about how money is going to be spent or saved. So really simply just being dishonest with your partner about money. Financial abuse is using money to control the other person. That might be something like not allowing them to spend money, not allowing them access to money or access to financial information. Financial abuse can include lying about the money. So there's that overlap with the financial infidelity. And so, really, using money as a weapon is the core of financial abuse. And it's really heavy to talk about both of those, right? It does not feel good to talk about them. But the reason why I like to talk about them is so that I can help people identify if it's happening to them so they can take steps, or to just be on the lookout to try to avoid that happening to them.
Yeah, and it happens, unfortunately, very often. If people are in marriages or long-term relationships or thinking about remarriage, what are some of the red flags of financial fraud that people can look out for?
I tell people that we need to be aware of these financial red flags, and there are signs that something might be going wrong with the money. They're not proof of fraud. They are just like clues that something is wrong. And so I ask people to be mindful of how your partner is acting with regards to money. Have they become more secretive than they were before? Have they had some sort of change in behavior? Have their daily habits changed? Have their money habits changed? So, one of the money habits that might worry me is if your spouse suddenly started going to an ATM machine and taking out cash really frequently when we don't have a history of spending a lot of cash. We put everything on the debit card or the credit card. And now suddenly there are these withdrawals multiple times a week, several $100s at a time, and you don't know where that money is going. That's a behavior that is a red flag to me. So, though the behavior surrounding spending, if they are becoming more controlling over financial information, if they're not letting you access financial information, asking you to sign documents without letting you read them, spending money in ways that that isn't explained, or spending money secretly and then you later find out about it. There is a whole laundry list of red flags that I could run down for you.
Those are some big ones, though. If you're going and withdrawing large amounts of cash, if you are acting differently, I think we all pick up on people acting differently, but a lot of times we ask ourselves, am I being overly sensitive? Is something wrong with me, right? Is that something you
Right.
see?
Oh, all the time, right? The ATM thing, if someone is going to an ATM repeatedly, they're getting cash to use in a way that they don't want you to know about, right? Because there's no paper trail. So sometimes what I see when marriages are dissolving, that person is taking that cash and hiding it somewhere. They're trying to get a stash of cash for themselves in case there's a divorce. The other thing I see happening sometimes is they're using it for something they know their spouse wouldn't approve of: an affair, a habit, an addiction, gambling, drugs, something like that. And so, a lot of people say, oh gosh, we don't use an ATM. I wouldn't have to worry about that. Well, you might have to. And that's the kind of situation. But you raise a good point that people don't know, am I being overly sensitive? Or the flip side of that is, am I not paying attention to something that is really important? And so as I was creating the divorce money guide, I said, I want a way for people to be able to sort of get that objective outside input. Should I be worried or not? So I created something I call the red flag assessment, which is a really short quiz. It takes 3 to 5 minutes to complete, where I ask you questions about how do you and your spouse manage the money? Who's in control of it? Who's contributing what to the household, et cetera? And then, have you seen some of these signs? Have you seen a change in behavior? Have you seen cash transactions? Did you find out that there was an account that you never knew about? Things like that. And when you get done with the quiz, you are returned a result that will tell you, how worried do you have to be? based on my experience investigating fraud.
That's a great tool, because I think for those people who are saying maybe I'm being too sensitive, or they're so used to not talking about money, which I think is a big issue for a lot of people, that they never discuss. I was married for 23 years to someone, and I barely talked about money. There was just this overarching belief around money in our family that we probably didn't have enough. And so you really can't spend money. And after my divorce, I realized that we had money, that we could have been spending more money, and I could have lived a lot less stressfully around money. I should have had conversations that were more clear and direct about money, which I recommend to my daughter who is married. And the other thing was, I now had a choice about how I wanted to protect my money and grow my money and treat it like it exists and it's real, and be as transparent as possible with my kids around money too. I think it's such an important thing that we educate our children, if we have them, and other people, which is why I love bringing people like you to the podcast, because I think so many people they go unconscious when it comes to money. Let's take a quick break to hear from our sponsors. This episode is brought to you by Amazon Music Unlimited. You can listen to over 70 million songs and thousands of playlists and stations. Plus, you can now stream your favorite podcasts, like Last First Date Radio. You can listen to any song, anytime, anywhere, on any of your devices. Get Amazon Music Unlimited for free for 30 days. Just head on over to getamazonmusic.com/last first date to learn more and claim this offer.
Well, there is also a lot of shame surrounding money. So especially if you're experiencing marital problems or you are in the process of a divorce, there is a lot of shame. If you haven't been actively involved with the money, you might feel ashamed that you don't know more about your money. If you are seeing some of these red flags and you don't know, should I be worried or not? People oftentimes, they don't want to go talk to someone else. They don't want to talk to a friend and say, hey, I saw that my husband is doing this and I don't know if I should be worried or not, because that's shameful to admit that there might be something going wrong in your marriage, going wrong with the money. And so in creating this red flag assessment, it was like, hey, this is like a really easy way for someone to get some feedback without having to feel like they're exposing their financial life to a friend or family member, right? They don't have to be embarrassed. You can just quietly take a quiz and nobody ever knows.
Yeah, no, that's a really great thing. I knew a woman who was married for a very long time, and there were many lies and many infidelities. There was an actual sexual infidelity, as well as a lot of financial infidelity going on in the marriage. And she never thought to question anything. And she had a friend who said, let's go through all the statements. Let's just go through and really, with a fine-tooth comb, find out what's going on. What are these big expenses? What are these opera tickets that he bought while he was away? What is this travel thing? Why did he, do these things? And then there were like offshore investments and a woman on the side that he was taking to the opera. I mean, there was just so much going on, and she had no idea. So how do people find out? Where is the money hidden? Like, I think, there was a Cayman Island thing going on there. What about people who have these things going on? How can they find it?
Well, they can find it by doing exactly what your friend did, which is go through the statements. And that's exactly what I wanted to do with the divorce money guide, is give people a framework, a process to show them how to go through these statements, how to get the statements, what to look for in them. Because I like to tell people, like the offshore accounts, for most people, it's not something you have to worry about. Like, I always get that. Well, what if there's offshore accounts? Do you have any connections overseas? Do you have family over there? Did someone once have a job over there? Okay, if you have some connections overseas, I'd be a little more worried that potentially money is hidden overseas. But if you've never had any connection to another country, probably not. You probably are like 95% of the people who are going through divorce who have a very ordinary situation. You and your spouse each have a regular job. You've got a checking account, a savings account, a retirement account or two. And in those scenarios, the way that people hide money is usually very ordinary. They know, and I'll talk about husbands because that's who I mostly help is women who are getting divorced. And so their husbands are often in the position of being in charge of their family's money. And they know that the wife is not looking at it on a monthly basis. She's probably not cracked open a bank statement in years. And so he doesn't take steps to conceal very well what he's doing. So it's all right there in the bank statements. And it is exactly as you described, a matter of going to line by line and asking yourself, what is this transaction? And you're going to see, you might see a transfer to an account you never knew about. You might see a cash withdrawal of $5,000. Wait a second, why is that happening? You might see a purchase at Target. Okay, great. We go to Target, but wait a second. The city listed here is an hour and a half away from us. Why would someone have been shopping at that Target? And so you don't need any special accounting skills. You just need the ability to go down those statements line by line and think real critically about them.
Interesting that it's very common. The scenario that I painted is so common, and
It is.
she felt like it wasn't, and I think that, again, there's the shame of like, why did I turn a blind eye? Why wasn't I paying attention? Well, she was raising a lot of kids and working full time and taking care of the family. It's like,
and trusting her spouse. We
Yes.
trust our spouses. That's why we don't look after the money. We think they've got it handled. You wouldn't be married to them if you didn't trust them. And so I'm really on a mission to help eradicate this shame about the money. You know what? There's millions of women in the exact same boat who weren't looking at the statements on a monthly basis because they didn't think they needed to.
Mm-hmm. Do you have a story to share about someone you've helped? I'd love to hear some real life examples.
I've got so many stories. One that I like to tell is just so simple. This woman was getting divorced and was concerned that her husband was hiding money, and she really didn't have anything to go on. She didn't have a reason to think he was hiding money other than her gut said something wasn't right. And so she and her attorney hired me to do the forensic accounting work in her divorce. And that involved getting all those bank and credit card statements and going through them line by line and seeing where the money went. And he was transferring some money around, but there wasn't anything that really seemed out of place. It all seemed to be accounted for until I came across a payment to a utility company across the country. And I thought that was odd. And these folks made a decent amount of money. And so my first thought was, maybe her in-laws lived across the country and needed help with a bill, or maybe they stayed at a vacation home and there was, for some reason, a utility bill from that vacation or something. I came up in my mind with ideas why they might be paying a utility bill across the country. And so I asked her, what do you know about this bill? And she said, I don't know why we'd pay that utility company in that other state. That's really weird. Long story short, we ended up needing to get a private investigator involved, but he had purchased a home across the country. He called it a rental home. Once we found it, we trapped him into lying and saying there wasn't anything, of course. And then when we informed him that we knew there was this home that he had purchased, he admitted to purchasing it, called it a rental property, but the truth was that his girlfriend was living in this townhome. And he had a separate bank account at their bank in his name only that he used to pay bills for that home. And one month he made a mistake and paid the bill out of the wrong account and paid it out of their joint account. And that was how we discovered it.
Wow.
And so there's always a little mistake somewhere.
Sloppy.
Yes. Yes.
You're reminding me of a show on Apple TV called Dear Henry. Have you seen that?
I've not.
So the show is about a plane crash that happens, and the only survivor is a 11-year-old, 10-year-old boy, and he goes to live with his aunt and uncle. But they look at the lives of every single person who lost somebody, and they have a support group in New York for the people who live there. And through this grief group, they discover secrets about the people who died. And it's fascinating. And one of them was a woman who was married to a man who had another life in California. She had no idea he had been renting an apartment. And it wasn't what she thought. He was gay. And she had no idea. Like it was just all these things that he had lost
Wow.
all his money. Didn't tell her because he was ashamed. And yeah, it was fascinating to watch because you're thinking, okay, this is a story about a crash and a horrible accident, and this kid who's left, and that could have been the whole story: is how did this kid survive with his whole family lost in the crash? But it was so much deeper and so much more interesting and layered, and I loved it. I just thought it was so interesting that we don't know many things about people, the secrets that people hold, and it's important. I mean, one of the things that I have as a mission is to help people speak up and be more honest with each other, be more authentic, and have tough conversations, because so much of this would be avoided if on a regular basis people were having conversations about what their needs were around money, around sex, around every hard thing that people avoid talking about.
Well, of course, as you are entering into a very serious long-term relationship, entering into marriage, I get asked, what can you recommend for people? And my number one recommendation is surrounding communication. You have to get on the same page with the money. Talk about what are our ground rules? What is okay spending, not okay spending? What are our long-term and short-term goals with the money? Because you can deal with anything that comes up as long as you're talking about it. It's when these things happen in secret that we have problems, right?
Yep, talk about money, talk about everything. So that brings me to my final question, which is if you have any final words of advice for people who want to go on their last first date, especially if they're doing that after they've been married, maybe they've had some dishonesty and fraud in the past. You mentioned the communication piece. Do you have any other words of advice for people who want to have a healthy, lasting relationship?
Yes, there's two pieces. And one is engage in full disclosure of your own financial situation with your partner. It's unrealistic to expect your partner to tell the truth about the money if you're not willing to tell the truth about the money. And so, even if you are embarrassed about how much credit card debt you have, or how you haven't saved, or you're embarrassed about how much money you're making because your partner thinks you make more, something like that, better to deal with it now. And I think, if you are willing to be honest, I think if you have a true loving partner, they're going to respect your willingness to be honest. And they're going to be willing to discuss with you, here's how I got into credit card debt. I thought I was doing the right thing. I made these mistakes, and here are the steps I'm taking to not make those mistakes again. I think a loving partner will respect that. So that's one, full disclosure on your part. And the other part is staying informed about your financial situation. So as you are heading towards marriage or cohabitating or whatever you choose your relationship to be, if we're sharing finances, then we both need to have visibility into those finances. I love a once a month check-in where we sit down and go over the books together. It doesn't have to be scary. It doesn't have to be burdensome, but a chance for us to both check in and see, what has our money been spent on over the last month? How much do we have in our accounts? And even if we have separate accounts, let's show those accounts to each other so that we are being an open book about what's going on with the money.
I love those two suggestions. Really good. And there is a lot of embarrassment about debt and salary and all those things. And I dated somebody a long time ago who disclosed that he had about $30,000 in credit card debt. And I said, where did that debt come from? And he said, well, my ex-wife took me to court and it was a false charge, and I just wanted to make sure that I had full custody, his whatever his share of custody was with his daughter, because she was taking custody away. So in the beginning I was like, oh, that's a good reason to use your credit card to really defend your position with your daughter. But as time went on, and then I said to him, I don't feel comfortable with you just not doing anything about your debt. What are you doing? And he told me he's paying it down. Well, he did nothing. And he did the same thing with his smoking an e-cigarette. He said he was going to lower the nicotine, did nothing. So after a few months of him doing nothing, I left. I was just like, I don't feel safe in this relationship. You said you were going to do something, you did not do it. But it was very out in the open, and I told him financial responsibility is really, really important to me. So if you're not going to do anything about it, you're incurring more debt. I don't feel good about that.
Well, it's so much better to have found out all of this before you potentially married him or something like that, right?
100%. And he was making purchases during that time that were so out of his means. So it was a combination of all of this, just a lack of awareness. Like, I'm just going to live my life and do whatever I want. And I'm like, yeah, that doesn't work for me. So, yeah, I think I want to know these things. I think everybody should know these things. And the more we can be honest, I love what you said about you disclose. And so that creates that safety for them to be honest with you as well. Fantastic advice. So Tracy, tell us, I know you have some great resources for our audience. Can you just give us that link, please?
I do. I've set up a landing page at my website, which is fraudcoach.com, because I like to say that I'm someone's fraud coach during their divorce. So the landing page for your audience is fraudcoach.com/last, as in last first date. And there they're going to find a little bit of information, a link to that red flag assessment. So if that resonated with you, if you have some concerns about your own relationship and what's going on with the money and whether or not you should be worried, go ahead and take that quiz. There's also a link to my new book, Find Me the Money, as well as to the Divorce Money Guide. So everything can be found there.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the show today and sharing this really important advice to help save people from getting into some financial trouble in the future. And hopefully doing the preemptive work will save people from a lot of heartbreak in the future. Thank you, Tracy.
Well, thank you for having me. And I hope that if I can answer any questions that your audience would feel free to reach out. And it's been wonderful talking with you.
Thank you. And thanks everybody for listening today. If you love our show, please give us a high rating on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts. And as always, here's to your last first date. If you are ready to get unstuck, gain new tools, become more empowered, and finally find your last first date, I'd love to talk to you. Fill out an application to be considered for a complimentary half-hour love breakthrough session at lastfirstdate.com/application.